Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of August 16th, 2023. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join either in person, online via Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future on Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
I believe she's coming. I see her computer. Yes.
Vice President Toohey.
Here.
President Stone-Cipher.
Here. And I'll ask Vice President Toohey, will you please lead us in the flag salute?
Yes, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless Hawaii.
Councilmember Schwab, would you please read the land acknowledgement this evening?
I would be honored. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohoops people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. And do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the August 9th meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Vice President Toohey.
Yes.
President Stone-Cipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stone-Cipher. We are wrapping up our summer events here in Everett. We've tried to have something almost every weekend, which has been really fun. And this coming weekend is no different. We have one of our final events of the summer is posted by the Shack. And it's fresh paint, and it's downtown. So I encourage you all to come out and enjoy that really fun event. There's going to be 100 booths, live entertainment, art, glass blowing, all kinds of good stuff. And then the following weekend, August 26th, I think it's our last two events. One is Funko Fun Fest on Saturday all day, and so come out and hang with all the whatever they're called, the
Pops.
funk fanatics, I think is what it's called, and then Wheels to the Waterfront. And so I hope everyone's enjoyed summer and stay cool. It's a very hot week. No further comment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening, Angie. Do we have anyone signed up to speak for public comment this evening?
Good evening, President Stone-Cipher. We do. We have two in chambers. First, I'll call upon David. If you're here in chambers, can you please come to the podium? Okay. Emily, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name, city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Emily Simpson, and I live in the Waits Motel. And I just came here today to remind you guys that the signing of the paper to call it a blight, leading it to where we're at now, has made my life much, much harder because all of the residents there are very scared about their future, and they don't have a lot of trust in government. Being poor, not rich people, they've been let down by the failed systems a lot of times. And I also wanted to just remind you that there still is a crisis of housing in Everett, and we have a lot of mental health problems in Everett currently. And I think that it would be helpful if all of you could go hang out down by Providence and see what happens to homeless people that are discharged after they have been detoxed or treated for mental health, and see that it's not so simple to get them housing, and it's not so simple to keep them off of the streets once they are clean. Yeah, townhomes don't fix that. And also environmentally, it's not really great to bulldoze it. So just as far as the environment goes, that doesn't work. And lastly, yeah, just another reminder about Maui and Lahaina, and that the Native people have asked for many, many years for people to hold back on the tourism as they are limited on resources. So, there, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And President Stonecipher, that's all we have for public comment.
Thank you. Leo, if you would like to stay in here, I need you to come to order. Otherwise, you may step
Can I
outside.
get up and speak?
If you would like to speak, fill out a speaker sheet, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm gonna do it this way. I'm one of the oldest families in this town. Going down the gutter. I flew 21 hours to come here. I wished I didn't waste my time and my energy to come to the cesspool of the United States. I thought I'd never say this about this town. First time I walked in this building, I was 6 years old. None of you guys are even that old. I've never ran for office here. I'm shaggy right now because I was in the part of the country where they handle things differently. This homeless crisis, to hell with them. Go get jobs. Get out of Everett. Old Everett would have shipped them out on rail cars. The reason I'm saying this is I spent some time this afternoon at the Hartley Mansion, one of the strictest mayors this town has ever saw. Roland Hartley was feared. Roland Hartley, we knew him. I met Roland Hartley when I was a kid. I said, "Why are you so mean?" He says, "Because I'm the mayor and the governor of the state of Washington." The Everett Massacre started in 1916. I went down 2 hours ago, I was down there. Everett is still, I'm going to say this. I thought I'd never say this in my life. It's starting to be not the town people want to go to. I was with some law enforcement earlier this week. They were relatives. They said, "Why would the hell would you even go back there?" I said, "I don't know. I'm on a tractor, farming our land, shipping our oil, shipping our coal through Everett." There was a man that came here, and we knew him, the fathers of Everett, but they never lived here. They built a Racker mansion that could have been bought for $73,000 at one time. Joyce Ebert bought it. I'm going to make a proposal. City of Everett buy the Rucker Mansion and make it Everett. Make it a historic place. It's for sale. You guys can't afford it? Close the city up. The Rucker Mansion needs to be the city of Everett. It's for sale. $3 million. Could have been bought for $72,000. I had a chance to buy it. Should have bought the son of a bitch. Thank you.
President Stonecipher, I just had one additional person wanting to speak. So if Ms. Storm Chandler could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name is Storm Chandler. My residence is Olympia, Washington. I am here to speak on behalf of the Wait Motel. I ran into a situation today of domestic violence. And if it was not for this nice lady, Miss Emily Simpson, calling 211 doesn't just work. Calling Broadview doesn't just work. I called this lady today and asked her for some help. tell me to meet her here. I also run a small organization, Mothers Grab and Go. I also have a ministry, Great Woman of Faith Outreach. I would like for you all, just take a moment, really think about this and what you can do with this motel to help others before you decide to fully go along with your plans. Because right now, there is a lot of homeless women. There's a lot, and mothers, and we need to protect them. That is very important, and also our veterans and our seniors. That's very, very important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and that concludes our public comments.
Thank you. We will move on to council comments and liaison reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your comments tonight. Over the weekend, I took my kiddos over to Wiggums Hollow Park for the Everett Fire Department's sprinkler time. I'm not sure if there's an official name for it, but they brought one of their trucks and hosed everybody off, which was a lot of fun. My little guy shared that it was too wet, but other than that, we had a great time. And so thanks to the fire department for putting on such a great community event. And there's another one coming up this weekend as well. I'm blanking on the details, but I know that they are posted online. Earlier this evening, we had our Parks and Quality of Life Committee meeting, and we're joined by Dan Ernestey and Tyler Chisholm to talk about the updates for the RFP for the Web Triangle project that was funded through ARPA dollars, and so that'll be coming before council, hopefully by in the next month or so. And then big plans for having that wrapped up possibly in the next 6 to 9 months or so, and that the plans for the Web Triangle can be incorporated into the comp plan. So great work happening there. And then Tyler Chisholm shared more about the work that he's doing with downtown Everett and placemaking and filling storefront vacancies and plans coming down the works for that. So I'd encourage folks to check out the committee meeting for more information on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, no report tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
No report either, but I just wanted to say thank you again.
And tax revenue and quality of life that provides for people. So I think there's some neat possibilities there where we can work on processes and make this a great place, a greater place for businesses to be successful. I think Dan Ernestey's gardening metaphor was really good that way. So I really appreciate that, and thanks to Councilmember Ryan for chairing that meeting so well.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
I also attended with Councilmembers Arlingo and Ryan earlier today. And also, let's see, last night I was at the library board meeting, which was super fantastic because we heard about, as they're calling it, REACH, and now I'm not sure if I wrote down what it all means for, but the social workers at the library that we've been talking about, and ARPA funds funded, and there is now at the main library a full, whenever the main library is open, there is a social worker there. And there's two, so they sometimes are together and sometimes aren't, I imagine, because I don't know if it's a 40-hour, but okay, that's besides the point. And they shared a lot of really great details, and it's only been going on for like 60 days, and 93 individuals have been, there have been 93 whatever. There's been a lot of help going on, and there are also, they're at the Evergreen branch 2 times a week, but that's not fully calendared because of, people and money and time and everything. So it was really great to hear about that. Thank you, Storm and Leo and Emily. I have a question, not for the speakers. I know that the vote was taken. I'm wondering how many days it has been since the vote was taken to condemn. And the reason I ask is because it's an ordinance and it takes 15 days before folks can do much. So I'm just, was it last week? Was it 7 days ago?
I believe
or
it was
14?
2 week meetings ago. It should
So
be
it's been
14 days ago.
14 days?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vice President Tui?
Yeah, I don't have a report tonight. Thank everybody for coming and sharing your thoughts. Appreciate that. And I'm just really happy to hear that the library's got the social worker, and we'll get the word out downtown to the businesses so they can refer people there that they might run into. So happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have a report. I too want to say thank you, Councilmember Vogely, for sharing that information with us. I wasn't aware that that program was up and running so fast, so I'm glad to hear that. I do not have anything more, but I can't move my mouse here. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
Yes, just one item, just as an FYI, because it was mentioned last week, we've scheduled a briefing on the bike master plan at the Built Environment Committee in October, so it's October 11th. And then we'll do a council briefing after that. I'm hoping, to have that committee meeting to help inform what kind of information is most useful to bring to the full council. So a couple weeks later.
That sounds great. Thank you. And we'll move on to our city attorney. What do you have for us this evening, Mr. Hall?
There's no report from the legal department. We are requesting a 20-minute executive session to discuss a legal matter pursuant to RCW 423110 1I with no council action to follow.
Thank you. We will now move to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the 7 consent items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And next we have an action item. I think before we get the action item on the agenda, I am going to welcome this evening Judge Leonard and Judge Kastner from our Everett Municipal Court to come and make a presentation and help us understand some of the therapeutic services that we have and the therapeutic services court program that the grant that we are going to accept or authorize the mayor to sign is going to help pay for. So welcome this evening. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for that. And Mayor, Council, I'm Judge Ramey Leonard, and this is our presiding judge, Judge Amy Kastner. And we've been invited by Council tonight to come and talk to you all a little bit more about our therapeutic courts and other alternatives to traditional court interaction or prosecution. So before me, my predecessor, Judge Van Slyke, in partnership with Marysville Municipal Court, they partnered together to get a grant to begin what's now called the Therapeutic Services Court. And then when Judge Van Slyke retired, I took over that endeavor. So I've been presiding over it for a little over a year now. It was a grant-funded organization, and it's a sequential intercept model. And so a little bit more to you about what that means and what that looks like. I'm sure all of you as electeds, just like Judge Kastner and I, have a lot of constituents who ask a lot of questions about what the city is doing or what our courts are doing to help people who particularly are suffering either from mental health issues or from substance use disorder. And so TSC, the Therapeutic Services Court, my court, specializes primarily in working with folks who have substance use disorder. So how it works is any individual in the court system, whether it is the court itself, one of us judges, or the prosecutor or a defense attorney, can identify a potential client who has typically either been charged with a crime that relates to drug possession or drug use, and doesn't have, there are certain criteria. The program's not really designed for someone with felony criminal history or more extensive or complicated issues that need to be addressed, but specifically someone who's identified as having substance use disorder. They're offered the option of coming to watch, and I want to encourage all of you, actually anyone in this room is more than welcome to come in. Our courtrooms are public spaces. Every Friday at 9 a.m. we are there having what we call Therapeutic Services Court. It's a little bit different, and if you do come and join us to watch, you'll notice right away that it is a very different atmosphere, very different environment, and a lot more welcoming and a lot less formal than your typical court hearing. I'm still in my black robe, I'm still on the bench, the attorneys are still present, but we're really encouraging people who are really at a point in their life where most of the participants and clients that we work with are unhoused. They are dealing with mental health issues at times. Some are not and are just struggling with substance use disorder, and really are exhausted by that situation that they found themselves in, and they really want a way out. And what Therapeutic Services Court does is it provides, with our partner or through our partner, Bridgeways, a way to get a very quick substance use disorder assessment. And if treatment's indicated, then they are able to get into treatment really quickly. The whole point of our court is to have a low barrier way to get a person into inpatient treatment if that's what's indicated. So what we see is typically an individual will come to that first session, they'll watch, they'll get a feel for maybe if this is something that they are interested in doing. The nuts and bolts of it legally are that the individual can, they enter and sign an agreement, and essentially it delays the findings in their case, usually for a period of about 6 months. And what they need to do is they need to agree to get a substance use disorder assessment, go to whatever that recommendation is. Almost always it is for inpatient treatment, and then complete whatever the recommendation is for outpatient treatment. Typically, it's going to be a 5 or 6 month time period. Our Bridgeways partner is also present to help that person get stabilized, because all of us who have worked in substance use disorder for many years know that without stabilization, staying clean and maintaining a clean and sober lifestyle is nearly impossible. If you're unhoused, it's almost impossible to continue on with your sobriety. In addition, many folks who have substance use disorder are disconnected from their community. They're disconnected from all the rest of us. They're disconnected from their families and their friends. And that's really the antidote to addiction, is reconnection. And so that's what our court does. It's not like other courts I've presided over where it is a wellness model where people are coming every week to meet with the judges and talk about how their week was. Rather, it's to get in, get the assessment, follow that recommendation, get very quickly into treatment, and then work the program without having to come back to court. And our liaison, our Bridgeways liaison, who is in court, of course, every Friday, she works with a person outside of court to help them get all the resources that they need to continue to stabilize their lives. And at the end of it, if they are successful, they get dismissal of their charges. So it's a huge benefit to them, not just to stabilize their lives, but also to not have those criminal convictions follow them through their lives. So this last year, we had, to be honest, a little bit of a slow start. And part of the challenge was getting folks to be able to come to court to begin the process. So with some patience and really learning along the way, and really I think the key to our success so far has been the partnership that we have with the prosecutor's office, defense counsel, and Bridgeways in order to all work together to find solutions instead of making barriers for people. And so far this past year, we've had 5 successful completions, so 5 graduations. And of course, to all of us, and especially us judges, that's the most gratifying part of what we do, and frankly, why I do what I do. To have people come back with their family and friends. Oftentimes, we don't physically recognize them when they come back to us, because again, I don't see them week to week, like in some wellness courts or a drug court model. And they come back reconnected to their family and friends, housed, typically working, and often having their kids back too. And it's very, very compelling to hear individuals come forward and thank us, and frankly, thank us. I've had all 5 participants say, Judge Leonard, thank you so much. When I got arrested, even thanking our police officers who are involved as well. If I had not gotten arrested and had this contact, I would have never been able to face the fentanyl addiction that I'm dealing with. And to provide this opportunity to get my life back has changed the course of my life. And then, of course, their loved ones are there saying that they had written their children off. Some people were planning their children's funerals, and now they have their lives back. So At the about 8-month mark, we realized that our court was seeing a lot of success, but our grant was only for a period of a year. So I reapplied for the grant through the Administrative Office of the Courts, what we call AOC, and we were awarded that grant. So that's what's before you tonight, is to authorize the mayor to sign off on that grant. It's a $225,000 grant, which will cover the expense of our court. Now, of course, the judges and prosecutor and defense counsel, they're already there. We already have that space. But really, it's assisting with paying our partners at Bridgeways. Without them, we could not do our job. Margaret Smith is our Bridgeways coordinator, and she's absolutely fantastic. She has gone above and beyond to get people and to get in contact with people. She's down at the pallet shelters looking for people, trying to encourage them to come back to court, come talk to Judge Leonard, we can work this out. This grant is going to allow us to continue our work. So right now we have about 10 participants who are in various stages of the program, 5 successful completions, and just a couple of people in warrant status. What we've also learned along the way is that there are some people who aren't a good fit for this type of court because it is such low court contact. Maybe someone who struggles with, and this is where Judge Kastner will come in, to talk about some co-occurring issues such as mental health and substance use, and the MAP court might be a bit better fit for that. So the TSC, or Therapeutic Services Court, is primarily for those who have substance use disorder and really, really want to change their lives. So I welcome, obviously, any questions about that if you have any questions about it. And again, I really do encourage you to come watch. It's a bright spot in my week every week, and a lot of participants who come in, even who may not choose ultimately to go on with TSC, and they might choose to have their case handled traditionally, have said that our encouragement has been something that's inspired them to continue to seek their sobriety, even if they don't participate in the program. So I'm very excited about it. It's something that, I love this community. I have deep roots in this community. And the challenges that we are facing, particularly with the fentanyl crisis, are such that we have to take bold action to make a difference in people's lives. And these are members of our community. And so getting them back into the fold and into our community to be productive members is my goal. So I just encourage you to authorize the mayor to approve the grant.
Thank you. And
Does anyone have any questions at all?
any questions for Judge Leonard? Yes, Councilmember Fosse.
I just want to say thank you for your passionate explanation, and it sounds like your love for that work that you do for the community and helping these folks. Currently, I know that we have like a lot of gaps in our system and some things that we still need to work on. Is there anything that you can point to where you might say is the biggest kind of backlog or gap or barrier? Is it something where it's like the housing? We know that's an obvious one.
Sure.
That we need more of, but any kind of insight would be helpful.
Some things are outside of our control in this community and really involve bigger partners like state partners. One gap that I do see, and you're absolutely right, housing is something that if you're unhoused, every week when I talk to our participants, they share with me their stories about how exhausting it is to be unhoused and to be in that position. And it happens to everyone. It can happen to anyone very, very quickly to become unhoused. Just a series of really unfortunate or tragic events can cause someone to be in that position. So that's obviously a huge barrier. Another barrier that I see has less to do with Therapeutic Services Court, but more to do with individuals who come into the court system because their actions get them in touch with the criminal justice system, specifically police, and maybe they are suffering from a mental health issue. And we have strict guidelines that we have to follow, of course, in state law about how those cases are handled. So if someone were to be evaluated and found to be not competent to stand trial, that's a group of individuals who I can identify as being, I think, the most at risk. So we have to follow timelines and procedures, and when we do, we are relying on and waiting for, if we make that determination and make a determination that there is a compelling city interest to get this person to be made competent so that they can stand trial, the state has just 7 days to come and get that person and get them the support they need hospital-wise. And the current backlog for someone who's not waiting in jail, which we're going to most likely release that person, we can only hold them an additional 7 days by law. And really, in all fairness, it shouldn't be an open-ended time period like it was in the past. But I've been told by prosecutors and defense counsel that that wait now for the state to come and assist people and get them the support and medication they need to make them competent, they're not even giving timelines anymore, but typically it's like a 2-year wait. So those individuals are just languishing out in the community, which is absolutely unfair to them. And frequently, Judge Kastner and I will see them coming back again with new criminal charges because, of course, from what they're suffering, they can't conform their conduct. And so they're still having these problems in the community. It affects every single one of us, and it's not fair to them either because they need help. They need assistance. They need medication and supports. So we did recently have a meeting, and there is some exciting really, really outside of the box kind of ideas that are coming out, spearheaded honestly by our prosecutors, which it is really exciting to hear about, kind of thinking about some different options. Because when someone gets picked up to be made competent, really they're only being restored for purposes of trial, and they're there for a very short period of time. They meet with doctors and they're made competent, or maybe not, but they just talk to them about what the court process is. And then if they are made competent, they're only made competent for purposes of prosecution, but they're not necessarily being given supports or assistance. They're just then coming back. We don't even see that because they're not getting anyone, to be honest. The other idea is more along the lines of sort of like what TSC or MAP would be called, a diversion or a competency diversion. And I was a little skeptical, to be honest. I just couldn't wrap my mind around what that might look like. But my understanding is that instead of waiting for that state process to happen, and every judge around the state is in the same exact position. I spoke to judges in Spokane, in central Washington, and all up and down the I-5. We're all experiencing the same thing. We can't get help for any of our community members who are struggling. But what it would look like with a diversion is to have, and this would be a grant funded. I think we're pursuing a grant to create this program, and it's a brand new. It was just invented to get that person supports and assistance while they're in the community, not to make them competent, but to get them help so that they can get their symptoms under control, so that they don't continue to commit crime and come into contact with the police, which to me seems like a solution. And we just recently had a meeting about that. It's in the very, very early stages. But it's something that I felt very hopeless about, to be honest, for a while. And it kind of gave me the first glimmer of hope of maybe a way to stop that process from happening and to be able to get people the help that they need so they don't have to wind up coming into contact with police, getting arrested, and that the rest of us around them are not also experiencing the negative side effects of what their disorder is. So that's kind of the other main concern that I have as a judge and as a person who is in this community is that. So that's exciting, but that is another real gap that we're seeing, and we have identified a minimum of 30 individuals. And one last thing, those individuals, just like the 5 that we've had successfully complete therapeutic services court, they're not great in number. There aren't a vast number of individuals, but we're talking about people who are very heavy utilizers of services, not just court services, but police and fire services and medical services. And we were talking earlier, I heard someone speaking about Providence and when people who are unhoused are getting released. It's a great number of contacts that each one of those individuals are having because they need help and they need services and support. And so each one of these community members that we can help can have such a massive impact. So while we might only have 5 people who've successfully completed, there's first, of course, the moral aspect of it, which is it's the right thing to do. But then there's also the practical aspect that impacts all of us and all of your constituents too, which is that those people are then not having to suffer through all of that. And we're also not feeling the impact and the stress that puts on our community. Obviously, Everett, we're uniquely situated in the regard that we're the county seat, which is wonderful and exciting. But as the county seat, we also house the county jail, which means that anyone who gets booked in our county of nearly 1 million people comes to Everett to be booked. and then are often released when they are time to be released. And when they're released, they often don't have the resources to go back to where they were staying before. And so I think our city bears and has borne for a long time a disproportionate brunt of that. So we really, really need to continue to be creative to try to fill some of these gaps and help people so that we can all bring everybody up and not have to see people suffering, really. Right. Any other questions?
Councilmember Vogely and then Councilmember Zarlingo.
Could you just tell us again when court is that we can watch?
Friday, 9 a.m. Every Friday at 9 a.m.
And does it just go until you're done?
It's almost always done within an hour. You're also welcome to come to any court anytime. We have very heavy dockets in Everett Municipal Court, and so we do have calendars after that too, but our TSC is typically over by 10.
And you've done a great job. Sorry, I just got distracted. What is one typically arrested for when they are, is it drugs, period?
Not always. The main criteria to be a candidate for TSC is it has to be related to substance use. So like you're thinking, most often we're talking about either public use or some type of possession of drug paraphernalia, but it could be other things too. Criminal trespass second degree sometimes. We're not going to be seeing participants who have aspects that are more community safety based, like assaultive behavior or domestic violence. There are other ways that are more appropriate to deal with someone who is working through those issues, but that's typically what we would see. But there's really no restriction on the specific type of charge.
Would a soda charge get?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Of course. Anyone
Councilmember
else?
Zarlingo.
I know our first responders have been frustrated for years at the difficulty of getting some people to accept help and engage in the system. And I'm curious, I know you've had some successes, you've talked about those. Is there any sort of pivot point? Is there any factor that is common in the people that agree to come to the court and participate in this? Is there something that makes them agree to engage in this and then maybe make them more likely to be successful?
That's a great question. Something that I saw, so I presided over in Tulalip Tribal Court prior to coming to Everett, and I was there for 7 years, and I presided over what we called wellness court, which the county calls drug court, but it's the same type of idea, just a different perspective. And one thing that we would see as far as a barrier often for coming into court is particularly with the use of the substance fentanyl. I mean, you can see it, of course, with any type of drug use, but fentanyl is a unique drug in that it is more of an anesthetic than it is, and it's an artificial or synthetic opioid, but it's more of an anesthesia. And so it really puts someone in a place where they're unable to make any type of rational choices that they would typically make. That's a little bit different maybe from, let's say, use of heroin, where while you're under the influence of heroin, you might feel those effects, but then as you're sobering up, you are able to function, I think, a little bit better. And so that's one of the problems, and what we've experienced, and I think it's true probably for all of those courts, is when someone is booked into jail and released, if you have that type of disorder, you are going to continue using, because if you don't continue using, you're going to get very ill. And so that's sometimes where we're losing people from coming back to the court or from engaging, is they get released, they get back out into the street, and they're back under the influence and unable to make those good choices. When they're in custody, if they, let's say they have a bookable offense, so they get arrested and it's appropriate to book that person either based on their history or the nature of that charge. When they get booked, it is way less likely that they're going to be able to use substances when they're in jail. And what they report to me, and this is just what they are telling me from their lived experience, is that they often will have that moment of clarity in those times because they're offered support too, to medically detox. And those are the moments when we can really get that person, the person who's inside there, to really reflect on how they've been living and the impact that that has on them. But if we don't have that, or if we don't have that to be honest and frank, the threat of some type of consequence, that's what they're reporting to me when they're successful is, thank you for helping me help myself, helping me hold myself accountable. But that's where we see people dropping off is when, if they're released and they don't have any supports to come back to court and they're going back out to active use, that's where we'll see people dropping off. Yeah.
Councilmember Ryan.
Great. Thank you, Judge Leonard. Great to see you. I had a couple comments and a couple questions as well. So I guess for context, in my with my county hat on and the work that I do at the county, myself and Councilmember Dunn, we've been working really hard on therapeutic courts at the county level and a way to what had originally began as work to put in a veterans treatment court at the county, and a veterans treatment track expanded to more of a hub and spoke model for people in the justice system, since most folks aren't only experiencing substance use disorder and only experiencing mental health troubles, but there's a lot of co-occurring disorders. So, so we're in the works for that. So I guess with that context, is there an opportunity for like an informational partnership of some sort with the work that the county is doing, just to make sure that you're not
It's funny
on an
that you should
island by
mention that.
yourself?
We're not. And the good news about our community, and I know all of you in this community know what I'm talking about. We might have 114,000 people here, but it's a very small town feel, and we're all very interconnected, particularly in the legal profession. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because Judge Kastner and I just learned that a person I actually used to work with in juvenile court many years ago, Jamie Reed, is putting together a group of people from all around the county, including Everett Municipal Court, the County District Court, and the County Superior Courts, to compare notes and sort of combine our efforts. Because really, it does require everyone rowing in the same direction. We're dealing with the same population of people too. And of course, Superior Court might be dealing with a little bit more serious crimes and different charges, but the same exact issues, right? And so we have been invited to join that, and we're planning on joining that effort. And that way we can share resources too. So yeah, absolutely.
That's great. One of the, you touched on this a little bit, but one of the challenges that the treatment court at the county level has been experiencing is that oftentimes people who would qualify for services, their time in going through the treatment court program is longer than the time if they were to just go through the justice system like the normal way. Right. So there, it's a challenge for people to accept the services when it's longer and is more time intensive than it would be just to plead guilty, go to jail, and then come back out again. So I was curious if you've been seeing the same thing, and if there's ways to provide additional incentives for going through the program beyond just expungement of their record, and that might be something that Jamie Reed might be able to better help have a working group about too.
Sure, yeah. What we often do, so it's a little bit less in our model, although that was one of my main concerns when coming into the court was, okay, so this individual has a misdemeanor charge, right? We know misdemeanor charges aren't punishable by more than a year in jail. And then how do we get someone's buy-in to do something like you're saying that's harder, that has a little bit more work that's involved? And I wasn't honestly convinced that anyone would want to do it for a misdemeanor charge. And I've been pleasantly surprised that that's not been the case. But that's not to say that there aren't individuals who might not be ready, and they might not be ready to make that type of commitment. So I know that for wellness courts or drug court model, where you're seeing the judge, like when I presided over Tulalip Wellness Court, when you're seeing the judge every week, we had not only sanctions that were appropriate for someone who was out of compliance, we also had incentives. So, I mean, we were providing people with gift cards for household needs, even for entertainment, all sorts of different things, and really identifying what that person, what that particular individual might need. So if that individual was a parent, maybe something to do with their children, those are little incentives that can honestly go a really long way. The other thing that I've learned through, I've been able to, prior to coming to Everett, attend the National Association of Drug Court Professionals conference every year. It's called the RISE Conference. It's been in DC, it was in Houston this last year. Really, it's thousands of professionals who are working at all different stages. So there are judges, attorneys, treatment providers, all sorts of different folks, and then the professionals that work in substance use to talk about those very things and sort of identify what might entice people into that type of a program. But I think you bring up an important point, which is that it's a lot more work to get clean than it is to plead guilty and think, okay, I do want to do better, and I'll agree to do an alcohol or drug evaluation as part of my probation, and then that person goes, and the next thing I see, there's a violation report from probation indicating that person has not gotten that evaluation. So I think it's critical to have these programs, and honestly, sometimes people just aren't ready. They're just not ready to do that yet, and that's okay. And I've had a couple of individuals who we've really had to morph our ways as we've gone along and change how we do business. And we've had individuals who we've sent to treatment now 3 or 4 times who are still fighting and still trying and then still slipping and then still wanting to come back. So I think motivation is one of those big things. But there are some other things that we can do, including supporting those people who want to be involved.
Great. Yeah, I agree that off-ramp services and off-ramp housing is almost as critical as the program itself, just to reduce recidivism rates. My last question is, speaking of veterans, I was curious if Bridgeways offers tracks or specialized services for justice-involved veterans.
That's a great question, and especially since we're a Navy town, I think it's critical to consider a possibility of a veterans court. When we had our conference this last year, our district and municipal court judge conference, I had a chance to talk to Mary Logan, who has a veterans court. She's judge over in Spokane Municipal, and she has a veterans court, and it's wildly successful. And so she has really been wonderful about reaching out to judges in other communities to talk about what that might look like. And that's something that for the future I'd like to plant that seed somewhere in our county too, particularly because veterans are amongst us in our community, especially because we have a military base here. And so I think that that would be worthwhile. And I think often veterans have some unique needs that maybe other participants may not. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what started it all at the county too, was a veterans court track. It would have been the 10th veterans court in the state of Washington. So, but then it got broader, which I was not disappointed to see. And yeah, for my last comment, just really glad to see that the city of Everett has restorative justice measures for people involved with the justice system, and I look forward to voting yes.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Judge Leonard.
Welcome. And then
So glad to
Judge
have you.
Kastner, yeah,
Yes,
thank
and then we're going to hear about the MAP program.
So the MAP program is funded in a different way, obviously, so I just wanted to give a couple of comments about it. It'll be briefer since it's not on your agenda tonight, but I know that council members were interested in hearing a little bit more about all the programs we offer that are alternatives to the traditional model of criminal justice, essentially. So our MAP program has been around for a lot longer. The team in MAP is the prosecutor, defense attorney, judge, our judicial assistant, and then we have a MAP liaison who's a Bridgeways employee. So it's another program where we work with Bridgeways. That individual is funded through the city's Human Needs Grant currently. There have been some other funding models through the years, but that's currently where we get the funding for that. The MAP program is Mental Health Alternatives Program. That's what MAP stands for. It's been around since 2013. It started out as the Criminal Justice Alternatives Program under Judge Mitchell quite a long time ago. Judge Van Slyke, when she started at the court, revised the program pretty significantly. And it's become, so she created a program that had to be at least 12 months. So when we're talking about encouraging people with misdemeanors to participate in a program like this, which requires a lot of work on their part, I would just add to what Judge Leonard said. Oftentimes it is motivation that they have internally. They're ready for a change oftentimes. And so the incentive structure, which is kind of imbalanced, as you pointed out, doesn't matter quite as much because they've decided they want change. One of the incentives that I find for people when they participate in these programs too is that they really feel heard, feel supported in a way that they oftentimes have not, certainly not in the criminal justice system. They're in a courtroom where the judge, the prosecutor, and their attorney are all telling them how wonderful it is to see them that day, how proud they are when they do things, that are compliant with the program, how proud we are of them. And you really see a transformation in their willingness to engage. So that's one thing that goes beyond, the threat of jail time, to encourage people to participate. But the MAP program, just going back, is a 12-month minimum program. In order to be admitted to the MAP program, there has to be some mental health dimension to the person's criminal justice behavior or criminal behavior that's alleged. It does not have to be a formal diagnosis. It just has to be, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, or it can also be substance use disorder plus some mental health issues, bipolar disorder. But again, they don't need a formal diagnosis, unlike some mental health courts. I think district court across the street requires a formal diagnosis to participate there. And then they are connected with our MAP liaison. Once they're admitted to the program, they participate in peer support group. They check in weekly with our MAP liaison. Our MAP liaison, it's a 3-phase program, so at each phase of the program before they advance to the next phase, they meet with our MAP liaison to do some goal planning. There's a goal plan that's created, which is individualized to them, what they want to accomplish. They participate in at least mental health treatment through our program, but they can also be required to participate in substance use disorder treatment if that's an issue that they're having. We do have one veteran currently. He fortunately has been able to access services in our new Everett-based VA outpatient center. So we have been working, our MAP liaison works with his case manager at the VA to assist him with the unique needs that he has in our community. We've had over the span, the first phase, I should go back, sorry. The first phase is 2 months at least. The second phase is an additional 4 months. So the first 2 phases of the program are at least 6 months. They can be much longer though, depending on how the person is doing and progressing. And then the last phase is at least 6 months. So a total of 12 months minimum. But we have had people who have been in our program for multiple years before they graduated or before they ultimately terminated. So it really is individualized to the person and their needs. Some people sail right through because they've decided this is what they're going to do and they're going to get themselves kind of on a new path. Some people it takes a lot more. But we're there to support them along the way. And it's quite amazing, as Judge Leonard mentioned. During MAP's history, since Judge Van Slyke, I think, was the first to start taking actual data and statistics about the program, there have been 50 graduates. I think that's from approximately 2015 when she started taking the data. We currently have, I think, 6 or 7 participants right now, which is a smaller number than normal. I would say our average is probably 10 to 12, somewhere in there at any one given time. But I wanted to share also with you that of the people that graduated, they had a total combined 729 criminal charges in our court only. Post-MAP, those graduates have only accrued 54 total charges, so the recidivism percentage reduction was over 92%. So that's a statistic we're very proud of. We still have contact with some of the graduates. They come back and visit us in court once in a while. They still often have contact with our MAP liaison. And I just want to encourage you to come see MAP as well if you'd like to. It's 2 p.m. every other Tuesday, so if you're interested, please contact court administration or email one of us, and we can let you know when our next MAP court is, because it's not every week like TSC, but we would love to see you. Any questions about MAP?
Thank you. Any questions about the MAP program? Councilmember Vogely.
Again, people need to be arrested in order to stand in front of a judge. And what type of support do unhoused individuals get? Because, if they're housed, you can go home, maybe have a little bit of support, and then maybe a phone to get back to the 2 weeks, 6 months, 2 years.
Right.
So what kind of support is offered, if any?
So we have had a number of unhoused individuals participate in the MAP program while I've been presiding over the program. It does make participating in the program much more challenging if you're not housed. Our MAP liaison does have all of the resources available through Bridgeways to offer them. So there is housing support, there is employment support and training available to people. There's a number of different programs that they offer. Our MAP liaison also assists people with connecting with housing case managers. So oftentimes that's a way. We've had people who have lived in pallet housing. I know that in TSC there are some pallet housing residents as well. One thing to note also is when I've presided over TSC, when Judge Leonard is not present, we often have members of COET in court with us, also supporting people. We're connecting people with COET. We're connecting people with all the resources that are available. So there have been a number of individuals that have been housed while they were in the program, not directly through the court, but through the supports that they're able to access because of our MAP liaison. So.
Awesome.
And I would
Thank
say
you.
they do much better in the program once they have that housing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about
Any
MAP?
other questions? Okay, well, Mr. Hall.
I'll just add that our prosecutors are very enthusiastic about and supportive of both the TSC and the MAP program. And I've attended proceedings for both and have just been incredibly impressed with how the judges run those proceedings. So to the extent I'm allowed to weigh in on this, I would strongly encourage you to support this interagency agreement.
Yeah, thank you. Judge Kastner, Judge Leonard, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the work that you're doing in our community. We are very fortunate to have two compassionate judges that are working hard to help better our community every day, and so we appreciate the work you're doing. Of course, I will be supporting this. I think this is a great program, and if there is ever any other programs, grants, or anything, other opportunities that you see to expand our reach and help some of these vulnerable people in our community, please feel free to let us know, because we'd love to partner with you and make sure that we can offer those services in our community.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It was a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. And we have two judges that are women as well, I will only point out, which is very nice. So for the item that we're looking at, item 8, I'll read it, and then we'll look for a motion to approve. Authorize the mayor to sign the interagency agreement IAA 24237 between the Washington State Administrative Office of the Courts and Everett Municipal Court.
Councilman Ryan, so moves.
Second motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the interagency agreement. Any questions or comments before we take the roll? Councilmember Vogely.
I would like to encourage anybody in the public to contact any of us with their experiences in this as well. You can find it at everettwa.gov, and it can just be council@everettwa.gov and or evogely@everettwa.gov. I would like to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zerlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And our next action item is a second and third final reading. Item 9, Council Bill 2308-39, second and third final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Beverly Lake WQ Retrofit Fund 336 Program 040. For your motion.
Move to pass. Yes.
Thank you.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before I call the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Now we move on to our briefing item. This item comes before the City Council serving as a council committee of the whole and is likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. And item 10 is our 2024 budget briefing, and we have our Finance Director, Susie Haugen, here to provide that information for us. Good evening, Susie.
Good evening. I'm really happy to present this briefing. We do have some good news on revenues as they've been coming in this year, so This is kind of a rare thing for me to come in with some positive news, so I'm going to make the most of it.
You get to be Susie Sunshine tonight.
Yes. So tonight I'll review the 2023 budget performance through June and then provide updates on real estate excise tax and lodging taxes, and then finish up with a review of the support the city provides to the PFD, as well as its current capital plan. So general government revenues have been coming in strong this year, and not just due to activity in one sector. Although construction has been leading the way, we have been seeing strength generally across the board in revenues. Total general government revenues through June are $5.2 million, or 5.7% over the budget on a year-to-date basis. Sales tax is delivering positive revenue performance with receipts at $1.3 million, or nearly 7.6% over the original forecast. The retail and construction sectors account for nearly 76% of the excess receipts. The accommodation and food service sector is also performing very well, with year-to-date receipts exceeding the original forecast by $156,000. As the third largest general government revenue, B&O is another major contributor to our performance this year. A primary factor is the aerospace sector. Though through June, receipts are nearly $1.7 million over the original 2023 forecast. Construction activity has been strong over the past couple years and is continuing that trend in 2023. Both revenue from permits and the value of construction are exceeding last year's revenue through June. Permit issuance includes a variety of housing and commercial construction projects. Permits issued in June include building, demolition, mechanical, and electrical permits valued at $7 million to Boeing on a variety of projects. Mechanical permit valued at $1 million to Brixton Everett LLC for future tenant improvements at 1302 Southeast Everett Mall Way, and building permits valued at $4.2 million to Pacific Ridge for new townhomes on 19th Avenue Southeast. Turning now to general government expenditures, through June, they are under budget by $3.4 million, or 4.5%, mostly due to vacancies. There are 6 funds that are currently running slightly above budget, primarily as a result of unusual timing of payments. However, we anticipate that those funds will trend back to budget as the year progresses. We'll be watching those funds for a possible budget amendment later in the year. Real estate excise tax is a tax on the sale of real property. Sellers pay a percentage of the sale price on a graduated scale. The state's percentage grows from 1.1% on sales that are $525,000 or less, and the rate rises to 3% for sales above $3.025 million. And the city also receives a total of 0.5%. The city's portion of REIT is divided between CIP 2 for the first quarter percent and CIP 3 for the second quarter percent. The first quarter percent can generally be used for capital expenditures that are included in our comp plan, and the second quarter percent can be used for park and street improvements, as well as stormwater and sewer improvements. Historically, REIT is a very volatile revenue source with large swings of income from year to year. In 2022, the city recorded its highest year in history with a total income of $10.6 million in receipts between the two funds. You can see in the chart on this slide that we had 3 extreme outlier months last year, and that's shown in the purple columns in January, June, and September. This year's activity is in green. The rise in interest rates is having a negative effect on real estate sales. So even though we accounted for the 2022 outliers when we were building the 2023 budget, we're still running a little under budget by about $400,000 or 6%. This chart shows another view of REIT receipts with 2022 actuals in purple and the 2023 budget in blue and 2023 actuals in green. As you can see, we are tracking the budget fairly closely, but yet slightly under through June. Lodging taxes, however, are doing very well this year. Lodging taxes are not part of general government revenue and are restricted for tourism promotion, marketing and operations of special events and festivals designed to attract tourists, and operations and capital support of tourism facilities that are owned or operated by a municipality, public facilities district, or nonprofit. You can see how the purple columns in this chart represent our year-to-date collections are above both the orange 2022 actual and the blue 2023 budget columns. It's very encouraging to see lodging tax receipts continue to perform so well after the downturn in the pandemic. Next couple of slides provide information regarding the city's commitments to the Angel of the Winds Arena and the PFD's capital plan. Between 2001 and 2003, we purchased the land under the arena, funded the construction of the conference center, and provided additional funding for upgrades to the facade. In 2014, we took on $27.6 million of the PFD's outstanding debt and also loaned them $650,000 for a new scoreboard. As a result of increased activity and additional support from Snohomish County, the PFD was able to pay off the scoreboard loan this year with interest. That was quite an accomplishment. In terms of annual support, we pay an average of $1 million in debt service for the conference center and the facade upgrade, and about $1.9 million for land acquisition and debt assumption, both from CIP2. In addition, we have committed to provide the PFD with $500,000 from the general fund and $100,000 from lodging taxes through the life of the remaining debt, which matures in 2041, at which point the city would take ownership of the facility. The PFD has plans to begin to repay the city for the 2019 bonds this year at a rate of about $250,000 per quarter. The PFD has between $600,000 and $2.3 million in planned investments over the next few years. Projects include a variety of replacements and improvements to core building facilities and technology. The PFD also brought Mang in for a facilities assessment. That's the same company that did the city's facilities assessment, which they used in conjunction with their own building engineers' estimates to develop this project list. The PFD's cash flow model indicates that these projects can be cash funded with no additional assistance needed from the city. And that concludes my briefing for this evening.
Thank you. And council members, do we have any questions or comments for Susie? Councilmember Vogely?
This is kind of a general question going back to how much revenue we are getting from eateries. Do workers get taxed on their tips in this state?
Well, there is no income tax in Washington State. And, you know, I am not a tax accountant, so I am not an expert on federal taxes, but I believe tips are taxed, yes, at a federal level.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's all, thanks.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Just one quick question. I was surprised the lodging taxes were higher after the summer tourist season. Any insight into why September, October are particularly good?
There's a lag, so what you are seeing is the summer.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes, the assumption on the debt on the PFD, that was in the form of bonds that the city sold then?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Fossey?
I'm, correct me if I'm asking an incorrect question. The Public Facilities District, so the actual conference center, how much do they actually generate annually?
Well, you know, it varies from year to year, and our management contract with the, well, it's Oakview Group now, to manage the center is where they manage they book it, they maintain it, and they keep the revenues from that. What we get from the conference center building is the rent for the spaces that we rent, the physical therapy building, and there's one other small space. So it's more of a public amenity, and that is supporting itself, other than the debt that we're paying on it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you. Out of curiosity, with the increase in the lodging tax receipts, do you know what that, I'm sure there's a formula somewhere of what that means in revenue generation for economic, like in a broader sense of like folks that are coming to stay and they're spending X number of dollars at a hotel that times however many nights plus meals and stuff. So what does that mean for just the economic prosperity of the whole region?
Well, there's certainly going to be a multiplier effect on that, where people will come in and they'll spend money and they'll support people who have jobs that are serving them, and so on, so on, so on. I don't have that off the top of my head tonight, and there's probably a variety of opinions on what that would be, but it is certainly the case.
Great. And then for Public Facilities District, I'm gonna probably butcher this a little bit, but I'm remembering when there was the gun show at the conference center and Council President Stone Cipher asked about the Public Facilities District and our support for the Public Facilities District, and then the gun show, and if there was any oversight that the city might have in what types of activities are offered, and I did not hear a resolution to that request. So I would just wanted to put a little pin in that. So
Well, I'll say that they did reach out to me, and they, we can have them come and talk about it, but they do have a procedure where they can do background checks for the gun show there. It's not a total loophole thing, and they believe that the revenue that they get from that rental is worth it for them.
Okay.
We don't really have much say in what they do, so
Okay.
they're an independent board that governs that, and
Okay.
they made that clear.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. First of all, Susie, good news on the revenue. Wondering, how do we incorporate those do those new revenue figures inform the forecasts that we do for the following years? Are you updating your revenue forecast based on our actuals for this year in certain
Absolutely.
categories? Yeah.
Yes, that's, we try to wait as long as we can in the summer, so we have as much of a history as we can of actuals before we start the major reforecast. We're looking at revenues every month, and we have models that reforecast them every month, but there is a major reforecast where we go through line by line. In the complex revenues like sales tax and B&O tax, we go through it by industry sector, so it's quite in the weeds and detailed. We go as far as looking to see how individual businesses are doing, and what we're reading about them in the papers and so on. So it absolutely informs our forecast. Our forecast, we have pretty much completed our revenue forecast for 2024. Last year I think I came to you and said, our forecast for 23 was not a recessionary forecast. There was a lot of conflict among economists last summer saying, oh, we are headed for a recession, and then the other half saying, oh, no, we're gonna have a nice soft landing. And while there's certainly still some concern on the part of some economists, as the Fed continues to raise rates to slow the economy, whether or not we can make that soft landing. The Fed seems to be able to seems to think that we're going to get there through a soft landing, but nobody has a crystal ball. But anyway, I will say that our revenue forecast basically builds off the strength that we're seeing this year and any other sort of specific details we might know about. And it is also not a recessionary forecast.
That's good to hear. With regard to the event center, 2041 is coming, and so we'll have to be contending with that soon. But I'm just curious, as we know, in the past, their finances were very kind of in dire straits. We had to kind of bail them out on the scoreboard. And we've been giving them money to support the debt and had to help them refinance the debt. To what can we attribute their, sort of their financial turnaround, if you want to call it that? Is their revenue stream just growing, or are we seeing them be a little bit more conservative on their budget side for the expenditure side?
I think a lot of it has to do with, well, there's two things. Honestly, they are a little bit more busy down there. They're booking a little bit more activity in there. And of course, we have our silver tips that are still successful.
Yep.
And so there's that piece of it. But they also are getting a significantly bigger share of the Snohomish County's PFD revenue stream. So that deal was rewritten a couple of years ago. I think we even had to sign on to the major agreement. Yeah, and so that is also contributing to their success and prosperity in no small way.
Oh, thank you. I'd forgotten that we had done that. Okay, that explains a lot. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our agenda, but we will now move into executive session, which is expected to last 20 minutes with no action to follow. The Everett City Council has returned from its executive session, and with no further business, we are now adjourned.